Good morning, dear students. I hope you all are fine. So, today we are going to start your sixth chapter, that is David Begins a New Life. So, this chapter is taken from a novel, that is David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. So, this is a chapter which is taken from a novel, David Copperfield, which is written by Charles Dickens. And this chapter is part 1, and your next chapter, 7th chapter, is also taken from this novel, and that is your part 2. So, part 1, the novel David Copperfield by Charles Dickens tells the story of David from childhood to maturity. So, this novel David Copperfield, which is written by Charles Dickens, this tells about the story of a little boy David and his story from childhood to maturity. So, David was born in England about 1820. His father had died before he was born. 7 years later, his mother married Mr. Edward Murdstone. So what happened actually? His father was died before his birth, and then after 7 years, the mother of David married to a person, that is Mr. Edward Murdstone. David dislikes his stepfather, who mistreats him for not doing well in his studies. Once, while he is being thrashed, David bites Mr. Murdstone. So David is sent to a boarding school called Sleep House, which has a ruthless headmaster, Mr. Crackle. So actually, his stepfather sent him to a you can say boarding school, and the headmaster of the boarding school was also of very harsh nature. So David's mother dies while he is at Sleep House when he was at a boarding school. So. His mother died at that time, and he returns home. Mr. Murdstone sent David to work in a factory in London. David's landlord in London, Mr. Micawber, goes bankrupt and is imprisoned. David decides to run away. So what happened actually? Then his father sent him to do work, and where he was working, actually here his master or his owner, you can say, he was not having enough money to pay you can say his debits. So he was unable to pay David also. So David decides to run away. So David's only relative who can help him is his aunt, Miss Betsy, so who lived in Dover. Dover is the name of city. He walks all his way from London to Dover. Now read on, means to say now he's left from that place from London, and he's moving towards Dover, because the only relative he was having is his aunt, that is Miss Betsy. So now he is going to meet his aunt. My journey to Dover was a difficult one. So he's saying that his journey to Dover, to city Dover, was very difficult. I was robbed almost as soon as I had left the house. So as soon as he had left the house, he was robbed means to say उसकी जो money थी, उसके पास जो भी पैसा था, रास्ते में किसी ने छीन लिया उससे. So I had no place to sleep, and at times I slept in the haystacks that lay in the deserted barrens. So he was having no place to sleep, no place to you can say rest for some time, and he has to sleep in huts made up of sticks in his way, which is totally deserted, means to say totally empty way. So I encountered dangers of all kind. Encountered means to say he met with all the dangers in his way. I got a 6 mile ride in a cart, and I walked the rest of my way to my aunt Miss Betsy's house. My shoes were in a woeful condition, and my cap was frayed and battered. So he was saying that his journey was very difficult. Rest of the way he passed by using a cart, and rest of the way he had to walk. Then he walked rest of his way to Miss Betsy's house. His shoes were in very bad condition, and his cap was also of torn cloth, you can say, and old also. So I looked miserable in my clothes that had been torn and soiled with heat, dew, and grass. So he was looking in a very poor condition. Miserable means to say in a very bad condition, because his clothes were torn and he hadn't taken bath for several days. He was totally, you can say, in a bad condition. While searching for the Aunt Betsy's house in Dover, I met her handmaid. So what he was searching his house, his aunt's house, that is Miss Betsy's house, and he met her handmaid, means to say one of her servant. So she led me to the house where I destined to find refuge and care. So she finally, means that lady who was the maid of Aunt Betsy, she had taken Mr. David to that place, to the house of Miss Betsy. So moving to the next page now. As I entered the garden gate, I saw a bespectacled, perplexed looking gentleman looking at me from an upstairs window. So as he entered the house, he saw that someone is standing in the window of the house, and that was a you can say a person who was wearing specs, and he was confused person. So simultaneously a lady appeared at the door. When he, you can say, he entered the gate of the house, a lady comes out of her house. Instantly I knew that she was Miss Betsy, and so he knew that this is my aunt, because she walked out of her house just the way my mother had described her usual way of entering ours at Blandstone. So because that boy Davin doesn't met with his aunt earlier, but his mother has told him that she is like this or she is like this. So looking at me, she shouted, "Go away, no boys here." "If you please, ma'am," I pleaded. So he is praying that please keep me here. She stared at me, wondering who I was. Stared means to say she is looking at him, that who was that person, who was that boy. So, "If you please, aunt, I am your nephew," I repeated softly. So he is saying, please don't do this, don't you can say, don't order me to go out, because I am your nephew. Aunt Betsy's reaction was one of the great alarm. She staggered back and sat right in the garden path. Means to say उसके कदम जो थे वो लड़खड़ा गए, उसको सुन के पता नहीं चल रहा था कि ये कहाँ से आ गया. I continued, "I am David Copperfield of Blunderstone in Suffolk, where you came on the night when I was born, and I saw my dear mama." So he is saying that he is telling that lady that I am your nephew. You met me first time when I was born. You came to our place at that time. So I have been very unhappy since she died, and now he is telling that lady about his story, that my mother has been died, and I was very happy since my mother has died. I have been humiliated. Humiliated means to say feel my parents are torturing me, or my stepfather is torturing me. So I have been humiliated, taught nothing, and put to heavy work. I had no choice but to run away to you. So he is saying that I was having no choice. My stepfather is treating me very badly, and I have to do this. I have to run out of the house, and that is why I have came to you. I was telling my aunt about my journey when all at once I broke into tears. So he was telling his journey to aunt, and finally he was you can say crying. I fell on the knees and lay my head on her warm lap. She called out for a gentleman to assist her. As he entered, she said, "You have heard me mention my nephew David Copperfield, haven't you?" So she is asking from that person now, and she is asked from that person to help her, and she is asking whether you have listened what this boy said. Mr. Dick seemed to be perplexed. Again, that person, Mr. Dick, was confused, but Miss Betsy continued to speak. "Well, this is my nephew, and he has run away. Now what should we do with him?" So she is Miss Betsy, which is aunt of you can say David. She is asking from that person, Mr. Dick, that what we should do with this boy. Dick suggested that I should immediately be given a bath. So that person said that give a bath to this boy. The bath took away some pain from my aching limbs. Means to say his limbs means to say all body parts. Aching means to say pain. So he said, the boy David said, after taking bath I feel somewhat relaxed. Some of my pain was reduced after bathing. So I was clothed in a shirt and pair of trousers that belongs to Mr. Dick. So he was given the clothes of Mr. Dick. That then I was covered in two great shawls which warmed my body. I fell into deep sleep, and I was woken up at dinner time. So after taking bath he slept, and he was woken up at dinner time. So The dinner was a treat as I had not tasted good food for long. He find that dinner was very tasty. I narrated my agonizing past to my aunt in as much detail as I possibly could. So he has told everything. Agonizing means to say causing great pain and difficulty. So his past was of a very, you can say, very sadness, full of sadness. So he narrated his whole story to his aunt. I was deeply in anxious regarding my future, but I chose not to talk of it at that night. So he was deeply worried. In anxious means to say worried or tensed about his future also, but he didn't told anything about. He didn't discussed about that. So the next day, I learned that Aunt Betsy had written to my stepfather about my presence in her home. So what she did, she wrote a letter. His aunt wrote a letter to his stepfather that the boy had came to her. The very thought of my stepfather tracing me and taking me back was agonizing. Now he was very worried that again my stepfather will came here and take me back to his house. So the days that followed opposed Miss Murdstone for allowing her donkey to trample the edge of her lawn. So, firstly, she blamed or criticized that how you arrived like this on a donkey and your donkey has, you can say, um, a trample or means to say crushed the edge of my lawn. And then she called me for me to meet the visitors. So then she called David that your stepfather has arrived and his sister is here. So Mr. Murdstone expressed his great displeasure regarding my behavior. So then Mr. Murdstone said that he is a very bad boy. He expressed his displeasure means to say uski complaints करने लगा वो. He said this boy has caused much trouble in the past. He said that he has caused very much trouble for me. मुझे बहुत तंग करता था ये. He had a rebellious spirit and a violent temper. Rebellious means to say ये किसी भी बात को मानता ही नहीं है, किसी भी ऑर्डर को obey करता ही नहीं है. And violent temper means to say he is very angry, you can say angry kind of boy. कुछ भी बात हो उस पर ये गुस्सा करता है. We have tried to correct his vices but all in vain. He said that we are trying to correct his behavior but all our efforts are in waste. In turn, my aunt asked if he had been your own boy, would you have been beaten him and sent him off to the house in London at such a tender age? So again, then Miss Betsy, aunt of David, asked that if he is your own boy, what you would have done with him? कि ये अगर तुम्हारा खुद का बेटा होता तो तब भी तुम इसको ऐसे ही मारते और घर से निकाल देते इतनी छोटी उम्र में. Miss Murdstone replied sharply, if he had been my brother's own son, his character would have been very different. So then the sister of Mr. Murdstone replied that if ये अगर मेरे भाई का बेटा होता so इसके करेक्टर ही कुछ और होने थे, इसका नेचर ही कुछ और होना था, इसका बिहेवियर बड़ा अच्छा होना था. So Mr. Murdstone added that he would take me back and dispose of me as he thought right. So Mr. Murdstone added that if he would take me back, that means he would take David back and dispose of me as he thought right, and उससे पीछा छुड़ा लेगा. My aunt simply informed the two visitors that she had no intention of sending me back with them. So Miss Betsy said that I am not going to return this boy to you, and instead she had decided to be my guardian. So she said that I will take care of this boy. Now he will live with me for always. Before Mr. Murdstone and Mr. Murdstone left, Miss Betsy said good day sir and goodbye. So she said goodbye, go back. Looking at Miss Murdstone, she exclaimed, and good day to you ma'am. Let me see you ride a donkey over my green again and I will knock your bonnet off your head and tread upon it. So she said, now be careful, don't do the same thing that you have done while coming, that you can say trampled my grass or trample my lawn with your donkey. If you did same, I will knock your bonnet off your head and tread upon it. Means to say, she said that मैं तुम्हारी जो आपने जो कैप इसने पहनी हुई है ना, bonnet means to say उसने जो हेड पे कैप सी थी कि उसको उतार के फेंक के उस पर वैसे करूँगी जैसे तुमने मेरे लॉन पे की है. Once the Murdstone had left, my aunt turned to Mr. Dick and said, will you consider being David's guardian jointly with me? So once Mr. Murdstone and Miss Murdstone left their house, then Miss Betsy asked from Mr. Dick that would you be a guardian of this boy also with me, and will you help me for taking care of this boy? Mr. Dick smilingly replied, I shall be delighted to be guardian of such a bright young man. So Mr. Dick with a smile said that I am very happy. I am very happy to be a guardian of such a bright young man. With a deep sigh, my aunt said, then that's well settled. Then Miss Betsy said, that's okay, that's very good if you want to be a guardian of this boy. I was so happy and I hugged my aunt and kissed her many times. I shook hands with Mr. Dick repeatedly, and I was delighted to have the two of them as my guardian. Thus I began my new life. So in this way he was very happy. He hugged her aunt, kissed her aunt, and also shook a hand with Mr. Dick also. And he was very happy that both two persons are his guardian now, and in this way he began his new life. So this is all about your chapter, students. I hope you have enjoyed the story. This is the first part, and in the next part we will continue with your in this you can say in this sixth chapter, we will second video of this chapter, we will continue with your grammar portion, vocabulary portion, and your listening speaking part. And also we will read about this story in some more deeply in your seventh chapter, which is part 2 of this story. So thanks for listening and have a nice day.